boys, we're back with another episode of the Middlemen podcast, and because it's the international break, let's talk boxing. And England actually doing pretty well on the football front. They're only a point away from qualifying in the World Cup. From Eddie Hearn's point of view, he's had a shocker this weekend. Two of his fighters losing. Kid Galahad lost to Kiko Martinez, and your girl Terry Harper losing as well. And let's start with Kid Galahad. Suffered a devastating defeat in his maiden defence of the IBF World Featherweight title, losing to a brutal knockout in the 6th round by Spaniard Kiko Martinez. Now, Galahad, 31, fighting in his home city at the Utilita Arena in Sheffield. You'd expect him to win. Martinez, never really heard of him before. Not ashamed to admit that. I didn't know a lot about him. For Galahad now, is it time to hang up his gloves, or can you see a rematch on the cards?
I'm not sure about a rematch. I'm pretty sure Eddie Hearn will do everything in his power to get that rematch clause in for obviously Galahad losing his bout. He's done it with Joshua when he lost to Usyk, and he probably will with the Harper fight as well, just to try and get his fighters regain their belts. But yeah, upset of the year. I would say surpasses Usyk Joshua in how big of an upset this was, because first time I watched, obviously I knew about Kiko Martinez before. His resume, although his resume has a lot of losses on them, they're losses to top caliber guys. You've got Leo Santa Cruz, Carl Frampton, whole load of featherweight royalty, right? So I watched him fight Zelfa Barrett, I think is earlier this year or last year. So then when I saw, I think he won one fight after that Barrett fight, after losing to Barrett. It was a close fight, mind. Like, Martinez didn't get beaten convincingly. But when I saw this fight get announced, I was like, why is he deserving of this then? But he showed us on the weekend. He showed us why he's deserving of it, and now he's IBF World Champion, and I did not see it coming. And I don't think anyone did in the arena either, because Galahad was dominating all those 5 rounds. All it took, 2 punches,
and that was it.
2 overhand rights, and it's done. So crazy night. Didn't see any of those fights going to plan the way they actually did. And yeah, just two devastating losses. Probably a third in a couple months for Eddie Hearn as well, having Joshua take another L on his record as well. It's not been a great year for him, but maybe with these rematch clauses intact now, they can possibly go and fight to get their belts back.
Well, that's it. Like you said, it was literally 2 massive blows in the 6th, and that it was all over. But if you think back to other big upsets, I think you can argue that Joshua against Ruiz was complacent. And you look back at other upsets in boxing history, and most of the time it's because the favourite just gets complacent. Do you think that was the case here, or do you think it literally was a white Povetkin, all of a sudden the fight changes like that and it's over?
I think it's a bit of both, to be honest, bro. Like, you've got that kind of element of not complacency in it, because I know how hungry Galahad was. Like, I think Galahad's been deserving of being a world champion in that division for a long time now. So I can't imagine he got complacent since he got his bout, especially given the fact it was his first defence. If it was like his 5th or his 6th, maybe you can kind of say there's an element of complacency in there. But I think he's hungry to defend it. Maybe there was a bit of underestimating Kiko Martinez. Maybe he was overlooking him a little bit. I could definitely argue that. But it also had that kind of white Povetkin thing in it, where it's just one shot and it's done, you know. But it's also a lesson, you know. You say Galahad's 31, he'll go again. When people take a loss in their early 30s in boxing, people always kind of like teetering on the, oh, is he gonna think about retiring now? But you know, he is a great boxer. He's enjoyable to watch, so I think he can take this as a lesson, learn to just stop dropping his lead hand when the overhand right comes, because you know it's kind of, not to say, you know, he doesn't know the basics of boxing. Of course, he's a world champion boxer, but he can look back at it and he can understand that there's improvements to make. And if he can make those improvements, then I think he can be a 2-time world champion as a featherweight.
Well, like you said earlier, he wasn't expecting it. He's only lost once, and that's to Josh Warrington, who is a massive name. And not that Kiko Martinez isn't a name, but like we said, he's not huge. He's not in that elite bracket of names when you think of boxers. But for Eddie Hearn, as we touched on, he's had a really bad 2021, I'd argue. I mean, Anthony Joshua hasn't done well. Kid Galahad now, Terry Harper. And you go through several of his fighters, and this year hasn't been a good year for him.
Yeah, I'd say I saw a lot of people saying that on social media, and I was like, yeah, fair enough. But when you kind of factor in the fact that he got that 2-fight deal with Canelo, then you're thinking, actually, probably financially, I don't think Eddie Hearn's ever financially had a bad year. But as far as fighters, his top fighters as well losing and his world champions losing, then yeah, it's been a bad one for him, and just that Terry Harper fight as well took me by storm as well. Obviously, got a bit of a soft spot for Terry because I watched her February, I think it's February 2020, win her first world title in that same arena as well, basically in that same ring, and then had the chance to speak to her in late December last year.
What's she like?
Yeah, no, she's just the most like, because I was pretty worked up before the interview because I was like, oh my god, it's my first world champion I'm interviewing. I got a bit giddy. But when you just speak to her, she's just like another person from Doncaster, and that's the great thing. That's not saying that boxers that aren't from Britain are like that, but I find with the British world champions, they're just so down to earth. They have that humbleness about them. There was just no ego on her at all, so it made it so easy to just chat to her, and that's why it hurt to watch her get stopped the way she did on the weekend as well. Is a tough loss for her to take, but I'm sure, she's so young, she'll go again as well.
Yeah, she will. She lost to Alicia Baumgardner. We think that's how we say it. It's a pretty difficult one to pronounce it, but the American Alicia, and again, a bit like Martinez, not too well known, but she's clearly a decent fighter. She showed that, and that's the beauty of boxing. You can go into a fight and you don't... It's like the FA Cup in a way, but every week on a Saturday night. You can go into a fight and you can take on a real big boy, and there's always a chance, because that is boxing, there's always a chance that you can beat them.
Always a puncher's chance, mate, and that is the fun of it. Sometimes you just think, given the way that fights are lined up, you don't expect it to happen. Obviously, in the Harper's case, there's been so much talk around unifications, around kind of unifying that whole division, especially now because I think it was last week or the week before, Michaela Meyer just got another world title as well. So I think she's now got a couple. So we're really looking at, like, everyone's looking at undisputing that. So Baumgartner didn't obviously come in with a world title. She was just a contender. I think a voluntary contender though, that Harper wanted to take on. So it was just a big banana skin, because Baumgartner's power, I hadn't watched her fight before. That's the thing. And then I saw her round one looking sharp. She had that kind of style with the hands down low, but then she'll just like swing one over the top, and not like Deontay Wilder, but kind of like Deontay Wilder.
So that's our comparison, is it?
Yeah, I think she's a lot more fundamentally adept, but she just has that power for that division. She just has like ridiculous power, and that was seen when she landed that shot on Terry. It was like Terry could do nothing about it. Do you know what I mean? It stiffened her legs up. Need to shout out the ref massively, because that is, when I saw it first, I didn't see her reaction. So I just saw her go into the ref, and the ref stopped it. I was like, you're just taking one shot? What are you doing, man? Why are you stopping the fight? And then I saw the replays. She was in zombie land. She just stiffened up, like had her back turned as well. And if you watch the replay, Baumgartner was literally coming in with that left hand as well. And that ref potentially has stopped long-term damage to Terry for that. Because when the fighters follow up with those other shots, you see it in the UFC a lot as well. When you knock them down, then they follow up with big hammer fists when you're on the floor. So those are the really damaging shots that kind of stay with a fighter. So for the ref to stop in and stop that, like those punches from full force happening, is huge from him. And yeah, that was massive for the ref to do that, stop it the way he did.
There you go. I mean, how often do we talk about refs in that way? It's usually the complete other way around. You think back to Joyce DeBar or Josh Taylor's fights, and the amount of times referees, we've both said on this podcast, have got it wrong or should have stopped the fight or have missed something absolutely vital. So that's really refreshing from the ref's point of view. And there are so many different ways that we could take this forwards going into Liam Williams. But I want to start with it's Ben Shalom, isn't it?
But yeah, I believe that's how you say it. But obviously, I mean, you'd be pretty familiar with the surname more than I would.
The surname I can translate. So Ben Shalom, he's essentially the new guy on the block in terms of boxing promoters. He's got his promotion Boxer, which is BOXE. Is it double R, triple I? Plenty of R's.
Double X, I think.
Double X.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Weird spelling.
Yeah.
But Boxer, and he's going to be the one co-promoting Eubank Jr. versus Liam Williams, and I've been reading up on him because, admittedly, again, he's just coming up. Didn't know a lot about him. There's not much on him, but he said he does not want to be compared to Eddie Hearn. Eddie Hearn had Barry Hearn, and the two routes are just, they can't compare to each other. This Ben's Shalom's come through his own way and has made it for himself, and obviously Eddie's the first to admit that he had it handed to him a little bit. So he doesn't want them compared, but he looks like an exciting guy with fresh ideas.
Yeah, for sure, and I think that's exactly what Sky needed after the breakup with Matchroom, because that's obviously huge to them. And I was wondering where they would go from here, but I knew Boxer was. I'm not sure who was broadcasting them, but they had their own tournaments. That's where the likes of Florian Marku would come from when they would just do their whole Super Series, which was really fun to watch. But they can just take off now with the backing of Sky. It's huge, and to be fair, I can give you a little insight into Boxer. When I was social media managing for a boxing brand not too long ago, obviously you'll know, and we were in contact with them as well, and they were always messaging us asking for if we wanted to be part of something that they were doing, and they were always thinking.
So they're in touch with the local brands and the community, and just looking for partnerships with whatever endeavour they kind of wanted to go on, and they were looking for people to bring in. So I think that's a credit to Ben's ideas and how his mind works. Is just he's always looking for something to do, and I think he really does deserve to have jumped on the Sky broadcast, because that will obviously do huge things for his company, and you can tell like how hard working he was to try and get there and to try and give Boxer that extra boost, and now he has that platform, and it'll be exposed in shining lights now on December the 11th with Williams versus Eubank. So absolutely that. I mean, let's go on to Williams and Eubank. Williams will face Chris Eubank Jr. He's wanted to fight for a while. He told us that he wanted to fight. When did he? In April? It
might be earlier than that.
Earlier than April?
Might have been about sometime earlier this year, when last time we got to chat to him. Episode 1.
Episode 1 it was before the Andrade fight, and Liam Williams came on and he spoke about Chris Eubank, and he spoke about Andrade. So he's wanted this fight for a while, and it's for the middleweight. Well, it's not for the middleweight anything. It's just a middleweight title fight.
Yeah.
It's just a middleweight fight. There's no titles on the line.
I think there might be, with the amount of regional titles and the interims and what goes on now, there might be something worth fighting for. But it's obviously not a world title fight, but it will obviously shoot them up in the rankings, and I think the winner sooner or later will get another chance at a title shot.
Well, that's what it's all about, and I think for Liam Williams it's also about, let's face it, Eubank, and let's see if I can beat him, especially after the Andrade lost. Obviously Chris Eubank Jr. has lost twice, Billy Joe Saunders and George Groves 2018.
George Groves,
so there you go, we've got it. But okay, rankings. Is there a lot more to lose for Chris Eubank Jr. than Liam Williams? It seems like you're going to fight in Cardiff, you're entering the Lions Den. For me, why take this fight when Liam Williams, we know as well as anyone, he's a dangerous boxer.
It's a dangerous fight for Chris, but you have to give him credit for doing that. Do you know what I mean? Because a lot of fighters will see that, they'll realise how much of a dog Liam Williams is in that ring, and you say, I don't want to fight him anywhere, let alone in his back garden. So got to applaud Chris Eubank Jr. for doing that. That's huge, huge for him. And the loss for either man will be a big loss for them. I wouldn't say career defining. I think they both got enough time, enough years in the bank to get themselves back on their feet after it. But I mean, it would both be their third loss. I think they've lost twice, so it would be their third one. And as you know, in boxing, just one loss is devastating enough. It denies you a lot of opportunities. So it'll be a hard way back to the top for whichever fighter loses on December 11th.
I think it'd be harder for Williams. Eubank's got the name. Eubank's got everyone.
Yeah.
Thing is, if we went up to a general member of the public, not necessarily a boxing fan, you said Chris Eubank, they think of senior and they might know junior. But if you said Liam Williams, how many people realistically would know Liam Williams?
They'll probably think of the rugby player.
They probably would.
It breaks my heart because if you ever Google images, just Liam Williams, it comes up with the rugby player. Like, come on, put some respect on his name, man.
Well, that's it. And so I know you said that, okay, even if Liam loses, there's more hope there. But I think this could be last chance saloon. I really do. In terms of his future career and really making a big name for himself, really becoming a proper celebrity and a proper name in boxing.
Yeah, I think as far as the world stage at least goes, I think it's a must-win fight. If he wants another title shot again, which I think a win could actually help generate, then it's just mad to see what ends of the spectrum a win and a loss put you on. A loss, potentially you can never get a world title shot again. A win, a world title shot might be your next fight. So it's just crazy how boxing works like that. But that puts even more pressure and even more importance on what this fight means to both these guys.
Yeah, it's like Derby County, 90 minutes away from the playoff final. Now they're staring League One in the face. But I think this could be, going back to Liam Williams and Chris Eubank Jr., the biggest domestic fight this year. I don't see a bigger fight than this year.
Yeah, no, I put that on my Twitter. Sorry, everyone. Follow Max Taylor Sports tweet. I did say, because there's talk about Kell Brook and Amir Khan signing, and I said this Williams Eubank Jr. Way bigger of a domestic fight in 2021 than when you're looking at the actual year of 2021. That is a way bigger fight than what Khan and Brook would deliver. So obviously, I had a chat with Matty as well, commented and say, yeah, well look, Khan and Brook has got the history. I was like, yeah, that's true, and it's probably, they're more household names for the casual, but what the excitement and the importance that this fight brings is unmatched as far as British fighting goes in this year.
Well, like we said earlier, we spoke to Liam Williams on our first podcast, and here's what he had to say ahead of both Andrade and Chris Eubank Jr.
We all think the same thing. I'm sure his team would have other ideas. Both of the teams, they're gonna believe in their man, but I fully believe I'll wipe the floor with a pair of them.
So there was Liam Williams saying that he's going to make light work of both of them, and obviously that didn't happen with Andrade, but whether he means it or not with Chris Eubank Jr., I guess we'll have to wait and see. Not far off. Let's go back now. Was it last weekend? Probably the biggest fight of the year. I mean, we speak about that being the biggest domestic fight of the year, the biggest world fight of the year. Canelo Alvarez, Caleb Plant. Canelo Alvarez becoming the undisputed super middleweight champion, beating the previously undefeated Caleb Plant with a left hook and a follow-up right upper in the 11th round. Canelo Alvarez, the WBA, WBC, WBO, IBF champion. Max, I know you love the guy. And the ring. I know you love the guy. What a fighter, what a fight.
Yeah, it was, I think it's everything it played up to. Like, if you've been watching Canelo long enough, you probably could have saw the fight going that way. Maybe some people who hadn't watched him a lot were maybe expecting a bit more action before it, but gotta give props to Caleb Plant. He came in, he lasted 11 rounds with him, and he looked good doing it. Do you know what I mean? He was winning rounds. Canelo's a bit of a slow starter nowadays. He likes to kind of build up and go into the fight. That's what I really thought about before the Billy Joe Saunders fight got stopped. I thought he's going to knock him out in this next round, because you could see him growing into it, and he grows into the fight as the fight progresses. But that's what you need from a champion. When there's 12 rounds to go, that's the type of engine you need. Saying that, it didn't really work when for slow starters like Lomachenko. When he fought Lopez, he left it too late and lost. But Lomachenko hasn't got knockout power like this super middleweight king does, so he was able to get him out of there. And you just see how he walks him down. I think he can do that to anyone but a world champion light heavyweight. I think he can walk any man down with disrespectful, like no respect for their power. Apart from Artur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol, I think he's doing it to anyone he can fight. Saw him do it with Golovkin as well.
Does he jump up a division now? He's completed that one. I mean, he doesn't have anything else to prove in that division, in the super middle division. Go up now, fight at a higher level.
Yeah, I think that's the bigger challenge for him. But the thing is, now you got every super middleweight that's winning a fight. You saw David Benavidez win a fight on the weekend, and now like everyone
wants to step up.
Yeah, everyone's calling for that fight with Canelo. So many people want Canelo to fight different people, and that's really tough as a champion, because there's always been talks about him avoiding Jamal Charlo. So I personally, the light heavyweights are way more of a challenge to Canelo and will just give him so much more of a harder fight than Charlo would. But then, so if he steps up and fights the light heavyweights, then he's going to have all of Charlo's fans complaining, saying, you're avoiding him because he's going to beat you. So in that regard, he does have something to prove, but I think unifying all the titles, taking all the titles, he's completed the division. He's completed that division. So I think stepping up now to 175, fighting the hardest punching guy that isn't a heavyweight in Artur Beterbiev, that's the fight to make. That is huge, and I think that's the only loss. That's the only person that can beat Canelo, in my opinion.
Big statement. I suppose you've also got to think, if you're Canelo, why tarnish the legacy? You've done it all now. Why jump a level and then lose a couple of fights and have those on your record? You've only ever lost to Mayweather. If you don't lose to anyone else, that is one exceptional career. He's had an exceptional career. He's the best pound-for-pound boxer in the world right now. And I guess here's a question, Max. At what point do you start talking about Canelo as one of, if not the greatest ever? Where do you put him up there? You've got Mayweather, you've got Ali, and you've got so many other greats. You go back to people like Foreman and Marciano, but where does Canelo rank now?
I think, for me, no matter what happens in Canelo's career, I love Sugar Ray Robinson too much to ever...
And Robinson, of course.
To ever put Canelo above him. But he's gunning for that top 5 or the top 3. The problem is with these GOAT talks, it's always arguable. Do you know what I mean? You can make a case for any like all-time great. You could probably try and make a case for them being the best ever. So it's just so subjective. But for me, if he carries on the way he's going, if he beats Artur Beterbiev and unifies a couple of titles at light heavyweight, I think he's got to be top 4. He's got to be top 4 to ever do it.
Yeah,
I would say Robinson, Floyd, him, and then you've got your Pacquiao's, your Joe Louis knocking around there at the top there as well. But I think he's knocking on that list very soon. But he could retire tomorrow, and I'd say, do you know what?
Fair play to him.
Fair play. You just walked away, with as the first super middleweight to ever become undisputed. What more does he have to do? What more does he have to serve to boxing apart from the ungrateful people that are just fans of other fighters that he hasn't fought yet? He's got nothing to prove. So it's up, but he won't do that because, and this is a rare because, he loves the sport.
And he's a winner. And
he's a winner, serial winner, dedicated his whole life to it. And he's not just there for the money. Do you know what I mean? He's in the gym. It's what he loves. And you can't argue against that. That is not untrue. That is not untrue. I wasn't sure if I meant to say that's a lie then. No, it's not a lie because of how active he fights. How active he is. How many fights he had this year? Like 3?
This year, yeah.
I think he's had Yildirim, Billy Joe Saunders, Plant, and then he had Callum Smith to the back end of 2020. So that's 4 fights within a year. Tell me what person in that top pound for pound is
fighting that regularly and to that level.
Terence Crawford has his fight next weekend, and his last fight was Brook in November last year, right? But he's what, like, you could argue he's 2nd or 3rd pound for pound, but no one else is fighting as active as Canelo is. So that's a testament to how much he loves the sport and how dedicated he is to it.
Absolutely. I mean, to be fair to Chris Eubank Jr., he fights very regularly. He tends to have a lot of fights in pretty close proximity. But going back to your point on Canelo and retiring and walking away or carrying on, I mean, you can do it 2 ways. You can do it the Nico Rosberg way in F1, where he won the World Championship and that was it. One was enough. He proved his point. He'd done it and he retired. Same with loads of drivers, British drivers. James Hunt did the same thing. Or you can do it with the Ronaldo way, where Cristiano Ronaldo is still, what is he, 30, 35, 36, 37?
36, yeah.
Something like that. Still going, in the best league in the world, still desperate to win. And that's, I think, the way, like you said, Canelo will go. And just finally on that Canelo Plant fight, there was a lot of exchanges prior to it, a lot of beef between the two. It got hostile, it got a bit nasty. But after the fight, and I'll read you the dialogue, Canelo insisted, he said to Plant, "Don't be ashamed, you're a great fighter. I'm sorry for everything, but at the end of the day, we're men and we're human. I'm sorry for everything." Plant responded saying, "Can I tell you something? When I said mother, I would never talk about your mother like that, because I don't have my mother. She died." Canelo replied, "You have a really good family, a really beautiful family. You are my family." So it's nice to see it. At the end of it all, there is a massive respect between these two great boxers.
Yeah, and if you don't know about the Caleb Plant story yet, look into that, because that is a true underdog story. To come from where he came from, with the traumas that he had, he lost his little daughter as well. To go through all that and still come out and be fighting a generational talent like Canelo Alvarez, that's, he's done his little daughter, he's done his mum proud, he's done everyone proud. That's just huge. You can't respect that anymore, and that's what Canelo's saying. He's respected that, as he should. look, I've never been told that I'm biased on Canelo, but I feel like I speak of him so highly that people would be under that impression. But when you hear things like that, it's just hard not to like him. Do you know what I mean? A man who dedicates his life to the sport, he was so committed to winning, and then who has a beautiful, sentiment like that after beating a guy.
You can see he's got a big heart. He really does.
Yeah, he has such a big heart, man. So he's just a great human too. So obviously, you can check in about his drug. You can always find something to tarnish a boxer.
But with every sportsman has that. Tyson Fury's had that.
Yeah.
Not just in boxing, but across the board. You get tax problems with Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo.
Yeah.
Every single sportsman at the very top level.
There's some kind of flaw or rumoured flaw.
Yeah, exactly. Maria Sharapova in tennis. You look everywhere, and in every sport, there will be an elite level sportsman that has a flaw. And great men as well. You can look back in history, Nelson Mandela, Winston Churchill, they've all had their flaurs.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, what they've achieved in their lives and their careers, just remarkable. And off that, and I can't remember the exact words you used, but we were talking about this earlier off mic, and we were just saying how lucky we are to be in a generation, to have grown up in a generation of these unbelievable talents, from Canelo Alvarez to Floyd Mayweather, who we grew up with, to Lewis Hamilton in F1, to Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi in football and tennis, to Roger Federer and Novak Djokovic, and even Andy Murray in terms of British talent. We are so lucky and so fortunate to have really been brought up on, okay, we didn't have a Maradona or a Pele, but we've had the equivalent. And in terms of talent, it's hard to see it getting any better. I know it will, because it always does, but sitting in the position we are now, when are you ever going to see a better fighter than Canelo Alvarez? Or we were lucky enough to have seen Floyd Mayweather. Maybe Canelo Alvarez is the next Floyd Mayweather in terms of that GOAT level boxer. But people like Vladimir Klitschko as well. We're so lucky, Max.
Yeah, and you're talking about Pele and Maradona there, not us not having been able to witness them. But what other talents as big as them were in other sports at the time? If you guys listening and watching can actually tell me, then I'll say, fair enough, I was wrong. But I don't think there's...
You had Ali, I guess.
Yeah. I don't think there was so many other fighters or other athletes in other sports that were so good and made such a history and made such a dent into their sport that we have right now. Like in our generation, I don't think there were as many. Like we got LeBron James as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Obviously, there was a time where Michael Jordan was playing, where there were, I think probably Maradona must have been playing at the time too. But I think we just have so many of them in so many different sports now that are so huge and are probably like knocking on the door of GOAT level themselves. So I think we're so blessed. And if you're a sports fan of anything, say you just come on here to listen to the football or listen to the boxing, go and watch these other sports, because even if you don't understand the sport too much and don't have the appreciation of the sport, you'll just hear about what they do, and to actually just witness them and say, hey, do you know what, I was there, I watched history. We watched history happen yesterday with Hamilton.
We did. Started 10th on the grid, finished first, qualified 20th, or like you said, I'm not technically, I'm by no means an expert in F1, but watching it, you can appreciate.
You just know how important and how huge that was what they accomplished.
You can appreciate this miraculous comeback story and how Hamilton's fought his way through the grid. Okay, Max, Red Bull, could they have done better? I don't know. It was hard with the way Mercedes pushed them, and
of course,
with that racing incident as well, when Max pushed him off the track. I thought it was quite amusing. I quite enjoyed it. I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah. I love Max's aggression. He just brings something to the sport that
don't mind that at all. That's what Schumacher did. That's what Max Verstappen's doing now. Max, as in Max. And just to end the podcast on this note, and it's a question to you, and I'll give you my answer. If you could have seen any sportsman live, going back to Ali or to Maradona or whoever, or it could be Kenny Dalglish for you because you're a Liverpool fan. Who would you have seen if you could go with George Best? Anyone?
Oh, that's so hard, it's so hard to pick between. Obviously, it's no surprise that my favourite sport would be boxing, so it probably has to be a boxer. But at the same time, obviously, I never did get to watch Steven Gerrard play.
Yeah.
And it would be hard to find a more evoking game than watching him play in Istanbul. And if I was there to watch that, And obviously, you know, Gerrard is not like one of the best ever like footballers. Obviously, huge historic footballer, obviously, but when we're talking about like you've been talking about these elite athletes, but for me to be there in that crowd to watch him play and guide the team to win in that, I think that's incomparable to everything else.
You're right, and one of my favourite sporting memories, and he's not someone that I guess I was lucky enough to have seen it, but he's not something I wish I could go back and watch over and over again. It was Lampard, and I'm a Chelsea fan, and he scored against City in 2011. It was winter time. It must have been about December, and I remember he scored a penalty. And it's the small things that you remember. I was at Stamford Bridge watching that one. But my answer, again, as a boxing fan, Ali. Maybe as an F1 fan, Senna. It would be Ali or Senna, but these guys that we hear so much about. But I think what's important to remember is we're lucky enough, just breaking the table, to have our own. And we'll end it on that note. Canelo Alvarez, certainly one of the greats. I'm going to figure out how to put whatever I've just taken out the table back into
commercial break. We got to do some engineering.
There you go. We've fixed up the table. But yeah, thanks for listening, guys. As always, really enjoyed that, Max, and yeah, we'll be back with more, and hopefully we'll get a big guest on in the next few episodes.
Yeah, thank you for listening, guys. Thank you for watching as well. That is obviously a new feature we've now instilled in the podcast, episode 21. We got the little tripod in the corner over there watching on over us. So we've now got a YouTube channel set up, so head over to that if you want the visuals. That is if you're listening to any audio streaming site, any Spotify, any Heart Radio, any of it. Head over to YouTube if you like. But yeah, thank you for consuming our content. We appreciate it, and we're going to give back to you by getting a big guest on very, very soon. So watch your space, guys, and we'll be with you next week.
Cheers.